welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari for the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you are not listening to Wes and Blake on the Pin Down over on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel, you absolutely should be. They do a great job covering the Pistons over there. If you are not reading all of Omari Sankofa II's articles on the Detroit Free Press, you absolutely should be. He does an amazing job, the best job covering this Pistons team. And if you aren't subscribed for free to the Motor City Hoops Substack, I highly recommend that. I'm a little bit biased, but my guy O2, I know he reads them because I can see the 5 stars. Maybe he can give me a shout out here and let you guys know it's something that could be interested to you.
Yeah, I've been trying to retweet them too.
I appreciate it.
This is an invaluable resource if you're a Pistons fan, just to get some thoughts on the inner workings of the game you may not pick up on first watch, or even just have something validated that you did watch. And then it's like, okay, Bryce saw that too, so I must know something. But definitely recommend it. It's free, great resource, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be tapping into it, honestly.
Yeah, I had one recently. I'll drop it in the comments here where I broke down the Pistons' offensive sets and actions and schemes from the game against the Pelicans on Monday because, quite honestly, O2, they blew him out, and I didn't know that I really wanted to break down a specific player. So I was like, hey, this will be a good game to just show Pistons fans, these are the actions you're seeing. This is what they do after timeouts. These are how they get shooters open. So it's not the transition stuff. We all know they get out in transition. That's a huge part of what they do. But what are they doing in the half court? And I'll be honest, I had one big takeaway from that, which was, man, they're running a lot more through Jalen Duren than what I even realized. Like, a lot of their action is throw it to JD. I call it at the point. I don't mean like point guard, but like top of the key elbow. And then they're running actions off of him. So if you guys are interested in that, kind of nerding out with me, I have about 15 minutes over the Pistons half court offense in all sorts of scenarios. But O2, a loss to the Wizards since we last recorded, a loss to a Thunder team that is one of the best in the NBA, but was shorthanded. And then fortunately, we get the blowout win over the Pelicans on Monday night to bring things back just a little bit. So where are the vibes at? We always do the vibe check at the start of the episode because usually they're up, but it's a little rocky. I got a little nervous there after those back-to-back losses.
Yeah, I mean, I would say getting back on track against the Pelicans, 46-point win, not only their biggest win this season, but biggest on the road since, it was their second biggest in franchise history. I think the first was around 2005 or something like that. I'd have to go back and check, but that certainly helps. OKC, that's a lot. I won't say it's a loss you can live with, but they got screwed. That's just to be frank. They got screwed in that game. I think JB's, what he said about the refs after the game pretty much spoke for that. And then before that, you lose to the Wizards. And that was the first bad loss they've had in a while. And not only do you lose to the worst team in the league, but in your home arena on 3-1-3 day. So I think that one kind of left a sour taste in their mouths. We shouldn't have lost that. But overall, yeah, I mean, vibes, the vibes could not possibly be, worse than at any point last season, right? They're still, I think they're 38-31, closing in on, at least being 500 guaranteed with these games coming up, and they have an opportunity to move up the standings. You have Miami. We're recording this before the Miami game Tuesday evening, and Miami's been bad. They've lost 7 or 8 straight. And then you've got Dallas, and, I don't know if Dallas is going to have 8 healthy players to put on the floor. And then you have the Pelicans again, and then you have the Spurs. So, yeah, I mean, again, the Wizards game was tough because you probably just choked that one away. OKC, you just got screwed. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Cade gets ejected and Shea puts on the MVP performance. That's over the course of 82 games, that's when that's just, it is what it is. But Pelicans set the right tone for this trip. And this time next week, ideally, they're over 40 wins and, have at least the play-in clinch.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about the standings in just a second. Real quick, Harry says, what up, though? Hi, Harry. Thank you for tuning in. Again, if you subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack, you get some slept-on Pistons where Harry records a couple minutes right after a game and then wakes up the next morning and records some more about that. Alex brings up a great point here. Love their bounce-back capabilities after some tough losses. That's growth. 100%. This team responds. I put it in a lot of my notes in the Substack, O2, is within games we've seen them respond. And that Wizards loss was probably the worst performance of the year. Like, I'm sure there was something earlier in the year that was worse that I'm just not remembering now, like recency bias. But that was a bad loss. Like, they had just blown them out. They play them again. It's 3-1-3 day. I know what that means to people. You wouldn't even text me back because I have a 602 phone number. Like, it's just a really important thing for people, which I understand. And so it was just like, dang, that's kind of a letdown. Then you go play OKC. I do want to talk about the officials and just in terms of what, like, I don't want to get into it too much, but like the JB aspect of it. And then you respond, like you come back and you blow out a Pelicans team where Zion was quite honestly like awesome in that game, like sneaky, really good. The Trey Murphy injury, hopefully he's okay. I think his torn labrum, that was like super awkward, like how it happened. I just feel really bad for him. But yeah, the Wizards then beat Denver. Good comment, Chuck.
They beat Denver twice this season, and Jokic put up 56 in the first game.
And this is the NBA. Then the Nuggets beat the Warriors last night without Jokic, without Jamal Murray, without Christian Brown, and they knock off the Warriors who were playing Steph and Jimmy Butler and Draymond. It's like, this is the NBA.
It's March is weird. Like, March hoops, like, I don't know how much you can really read into it. And that's the other aspect, too, is that March is just a weird time for NBA basketball because you start to get, for some teams, on some level, you're sensing the playoffs, and it's been a long year already. So you get some wacky outcomes. Like, the Pistons probably picked up their most wins last March just because teams, like, it's just wacky. Like, I don't want to say teams are on their game, but it's March basketball. So you're going to get some wacky results.
Yeah, I mean, guys are in and out of the lineup. I just got done watching the Rockets versus Sixers game from Monday night where Quentin Grimes, Pistons legend, went for like almost 50, but the Rockets come back and win in overtime. It just really weird stuff. As K-Barb says, yes, Marcus Smart, Holmes, Middleton can still play. I thought they did nice things.
That's a great point. Like, you played that team the second time in a row. Marcus Smart's been traded twice. He's got something to play for. Chris Middleton just got traded for Kuzma. He's got something to play for. And that was his pride on the line at that point, right? Like, and they got those guys at the deadline. So this Wizards team, like, I think they've won like 5 of 10 or like 6 of 10 or something like that. Like, they've actually played better since they got those vets. Not that it makes the loss any better, but they have some real vets now. Like, Marcus Smart and Middleton are trying to prove something right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alex Sarr's been playing well. Recently had some big games. Jalen Bell, what's up, my guy? What's up, fellas? We need that 4 seed. We'll talk seeding and playoff stuff in just a second. Mr. Ray, I missed Grimes by the game. I think that was part of why when we did the expectations thing last week, why Tim Hardaway Jr. was a little bit lower. Alan from Twitter says, yep, the fully healthy Wolves lost to the Pacers. Oh, that's true. This was the Obi Toppin game, right? Like, Obi went for 40 or something. Yes, Chuck. The Sixers were up huge. Like 20 or 30, and then the Rockets went crazy in the third quarter from 3. Jalen Green had a career night in assists, and then the Sixers took the lead again in the fourth. We're up 10 with like a few minutes to go. The Rockets came back, sent it to overtime, all of that. So just, amazing stuff. Aruna says Smart had shot 33% from 3 on the season, 66 from 3 against the Pistons.
You know, it's funny because Marcus Smart went out from 3 against the Pistons with the Grizzlies in November too. So yeah, I don't know. Like, he probably knocked down like most of his three-pointers against the Pistons this season for whatever reason. He played them probably a good 3 or 4 times.
Mr. Ray says Obi Toppin looked like a mythical creature in that game. Yeah, apparently he played really well. So, okay, I want to get back to that Wizards game. Excuse me, the Thunder game. I don't want to get into SGA, drawing fouls, ethical and unethical basketball, because we'll get on a 20-minute tangent, and I assume I'm on a side of this that most people won't agree with. So we don't need to do that. We can save that for an off-season conversation. I do want to talk about JB's response. Actually, I want to get your perspective on what happened in the game in terms of, even though they were getting a tough whistle, do you think that the players went a little too far? Do you think Cade lost his composure? Does he have to do better about staying in the game in those situations? Or is it understandable? And then I also want to talk about what JB said after the game, because that was my biggest takeaway from all of it, was what JB said and how he went about it in the postgame. So what was kind of your thoughts just on the officiating? For those that don't know, just a tough officiated game for the Pistons. SGA got a great whistle, technicals, ejections, all of that. What were your thoughts on how that all went down?
Yeah, I mean, just watching the game live, like some of the calls were obviously wrong. There was like the call where Lou Dort slipped and they reviewed Stu for a hostile act. And that's where it all kind of went down, right? Like, they're reviewing Stu, get who it was that went to the line on that play. And then you end up getting 3 technical
Lou Dort,
fouls.
right? Like Lou Dort fell down guarding the ball, but then
and he really
Stewart
just flipped.
was guarding, somebody else was guarding Stewart, and Stewart
whoever the big was on the court for them, Stu, like it was like a box out shove.
Yeah, like kind of tossed him to the side, like something.
Yeah, like nothing really that was worth calling, and I got rid of loose ball foul. Again, I think for the Pistons, I think it's just the ejection aspect, ejection aspect. Like if it's LeBron, if it's like a more established superstar, you're not going to get ejected from like arguing over a call when there is clearly some confusion on the court on if they should have been lining up or not.
And something he was right about. Listen, I watch a lot of games after the fact, O2, and so I download from Synergy, and then so some of this stuff gets skipped, and so I miss all the context. So I didn't fully understand what happened, but my understanding is they didn't line up when they should have lined up, and Cade told them that, and then they got pissy about it.
Yeah, and, granted, we don't know exactly what was said
Sure.
at the line between them, but you just don't see stars get ejected when they're not doing anything too crazy, right? Like, it seemed like there was just some back and forth conversation. And I mean, once you toss Cade, they actually did get within a point. They were down 16. And it took 3 of the craziest shots I've seen this season in person from Shea to really close that game out. But I would understand why, like, I think there's a composure aspect, but also just watching that game live, like, I think they had some legitimate gripes. And I think JB's anger after the game kind of spoke for it. Like, you can always blame refereeing and this and that, but just watching that game live, it was like there were some calls that I couldn't make sense of at all. So it was just one of those games. Like I said earlier, one of those games.
I miss the emotional aspect of it because a lot of times I don't even listen to the volume, and it's nothing against like Blaha and Kel.
Oh,
like,
man.
So that's the thing. Or and I don't listen to the other teams, right? Because a lot of times I'm watching the game with my wife sitting right next to me, and she's watching TV or doing whatever. So I just don't listen to the volume. And so I just miss a lot of stuff and context around those type of things. I do want to get to the JB thing, because I had a different takeaway than others about JB. A lot of people were like, oh, he was just so pissed off. He went in there, said... I thought what JB did was intentional. I thought his wording and his phrasing was a direct message to the league and the officials that you better respect us. And I thought it was calculated. Now, maybe he was pissed off too, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think it was just an emotional response to the question or whatever. I think it was JB setting things up for this stretch run. And more importantly, O2, for a playoff series against potentially the New York Knicks, where he doesn't want his young team being disrespected and screwed throughout the entire series against one of the big market teams. So I felt like he was already putting that message out there. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I felt like he looked at it as an opportunity to do that, not just an emotional response.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was calculated for sure. Just because all season the Pistons have felt as though they haven't really gotten the respect that they deserve from refs. And that's not just this season. I mean, that dates back to, when Dwayne was still coach the season before last. It's just, the feeling of being a young team and the refs not giving you respect compared to teams who are either veteran teams or, just have more star power or whatever it may be. So it's absolutely calculated. Like, I think, not to say it wasn't authentic, but
sure, I'm not saying it was manufactured out of, like, I still think it was organic, but there was a real meaning behind it.
Yeah, because when you play that type of game, and I mean, they genuinely competed hard in that game. It's just that OKC is a good team, but that wasn't, if you still have Cade in that game, and especially with the run they put together late, like conceivably you could see the outcome being a little bit different than it was. So yeah, I think it is calculated, but also, I mean, the Pistons are 5-6 games above 500. Like, they're not like a quote unquote young team anymore. They're like actually playing pretty good basketball and are pretty established at this point. So calculated on his part, genuine anger, but at the same time, JB wants the league to know that like we're here and we shouldn't be treated that way.
So 01 says, hi, Bryce and Omari. Cade lost his composure, but with only 2 ejections in 3 years, a bad shooting night and really bad calls when he hasn't been getting to the line much. I give Cade a pass. I'm cool with it. I was just curious. I also think this is important from Steven. JB's rant was a little performative to let his team know he's got their backs. I agree with that as well. Like, I've said things publicly as a coach, knowing my players would hear me, or I've said it with them in earshot, whereas like I know this will let them know I have their back. I defend them. I'm going to be there for them no matter what. And yeah, I mean, so the question was like, what difference does it make? Like, maybe it doesn't, but I have a hard time believing like the officials don't hear some of this. They don't feel the heat. The league doesn't hear some of this. Like, all of this kind of builds up into like even the thing with Shaq, right? Like, where it's like, oh, you know, Mimic says best story in basketball. Nosh. Shaq said Coach Billups isn't the best coach. Like, one, if you guys want to get my thoughts on that, I had some thoughts over on the Game Theory podcast. You can find that, guys. Go watch that. We did like 20 minutes on the Pistons over on Game Theory. Don't go to live, go to videos, and you can find it right there. But I was like, this team is fun. People should we were talking about it before the podcast, O2. Like, people should know this team. They should know who Cade Cunningham is. They should know what he does. He should get a good whistle. Like, JB should be respected as a coach, all of that. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. We don't have to spend any more time other than that. What else? Great response against the Pelicans before we get into some other stuff. Obviously, we're not done. That sounded like I was like, hey, let's get out of here. No, well, anything else from that game, the games this week, the Pelicans game, before we start kind of looking ahead into standings and some of that stuff?
Yeah, Fontecchio got going last night.
Yes,
5 of 5 from 3, 23 points, 9 of 10 overall.
I assume this is okay to do, right? Like, this isn't inappropriate in some way or something. Like, I'm not giving somebody the middle finger in Italian or, okay.
I don't think so. I mean, if you are, then, you know, we can't do anything about it now. So, hey, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yes, and I talked to him after the game. So check that out on freak.com if you haven't.
Yes,
just about,
check it out, guys.
You know, the slump he's been in this season. I think going into that game, he was shooting like 32% from 3 this season. Last year, he shot with the Pistons in those 16 games, he was around 42%. So pretty drastic difference. But he's been in the rotation this whole season. Like, he's played 62 games. You know, he's had trust from JB. And if he can get his shot going, then like you're talking about like a pretty big lift off the bench, because they've already figured it out without him knocking down threes. And we know he can shoot. Like, we know what he did last night should not be a rare outcome for him. Like, we saw, like, he's got an established track record of knocking down shots. So good sign for him. It was just good to have a game that was essentially over after, 6 minutes, so that guys could just kind of go out and, just figure stuff out. He definitely needed that. And, ideally for them and for him, it's a sign of how he'll finish the season.
So Jack says the fact JB didn't get fined for his comments feels kind of telling. Wes, it was actually just saying the same thing in the private chat. It is interesting that he didn't get fined in that situation.
You know, it's funny. The first time he went off against the refs this year, I never saw a fine announced for that either. So
interesting. Jalen Bell, it's almost like when Tech gets his minutes, he can played like 9 more minutes a game on average. I agree, Jalen. Listen, I thought Fontecchio was going to start this year, so I was a huge fan. The one thing I'll say is, where are you stealing those 9 minutes from? Which could be a thing that happens in the playoffs. And K-Barb also, I'm glad JB hasn't wavered on Tech's role. JB hasn't wavered on anybody's role or rotation. Like, it's one thing that has been very consistent. And other than Asar to start the year and J.I., obviously with the unfortunate leg injury, it's essentially been the same rotation. Like, you can pretty much, it's like clockwork. You're going to get the same starting 5. You're going to get these guys off the bench. You kind of know the rotations. Like, I feel like I know Cade Cunningham's minutes, like what he's going to play, when he's going to sub, especially in the second half, all of that. If a guy's out, it's probably going to be Sasser that's going to get some minutes. If the big's get in foul trouble, you're going to get Paul Reed minutes. We got that last night. True to form, we got a mid-range jumper like we always do from B-Ball Paul. I agree with you. Fontecchio finding the jumper last night was probably the biggest storyline from that individual game, because I actually think he's been good defensively, and I think he's been really good on the offensive boards, even beyond what the numbers say. So I definitely think that was cool. One last thing before we go to break, and then we'll start the second segment with some standing stuff. How about the end of the bench just coming in and like just piling on, like Sasser hitting threes, Paul Reed hit a 3. Like, they just kept it going, and that's kind of fun as well. Like, I know it sucks for the other team, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's nice to have every now and then. Just let the guys who hadn't been getting a run for have a reason to check in and blow off some steam. Definitely like a well-earned game. Like, I think that's the perfect game to bounce back from after you come off of 2 of your more frustrating losses this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, if you have questions, this would be an episode. Get them into the chat. I've already started quite a few. Probably do that about 20 minutes from now, and then we'll finish the episode with that. When we come back, Omari, I do want to take a look at the standings, where the Pistons are at, potential matchups. We can talk a little bit more about the schedule down the stretch. We'll get into all of that right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 2, and I feel like the Pistons are exactly where they were like this time last week, where, you know, it's like 6th seed, Indiana's 5th, and then Milwaukee's 4th, but that could be shaken up a lot. Like, that's, you know, far from settled, and that's actually like a really nice thing, I think, for this team to chase at this point, right? Like, you've already essentially got, you know, the postseason wrapped up, but to be able to even have a window to get home court advantage, I think it's still, like, you say that out loud and it's like, wow, right? Like, that's a really big improvement. So being 2 games out, like, I think that's, like, this is going to be the most fun, like, last month of basketball in a while, just given that this is going to feel like the pre-playoffs, essentially. Like, all 3 of these teams can't take any nights off.
I don't want them to get home court advantage because they play better on the road according to their win-loss record. And sorry, everybody in Detroit, I know, like, I don't get to go to the games anyway, so I don't care. Like, that's selfish of me. I understand. I want them to win because then we get to break down more stuff. We were talking about before the podcast, like, bro, like, if they make the when they make the playoffs and they're in a series with the Pacers, maybe we can get Caitlin Cooper to come over, record with us. If they're playing the Knicks, maybe we can bring James Edwards on, or my guy Andrew Claudio. Like, you know how much fun it's going to be to talk through a playoff series for this team? So for me, selfishly, I don't care where they play. And based on the record, there might be a better chance. I actually do think they play better on the road. And I think it's because the vibes are so, like, I think teams that have vibes like this play better on the road because they, like, build around each other, like, they insulate each other, and they take great pride into going into somebody else's arena and knocking them off. And because they have such good vibes, I wonder if they get overhyped at home. Like, LCA is blowing up. This isn't a negative. Like, I'm not, like, critiquing the fans. I just feel like sometimes whenever you're a team that's this close, or what it looks like, you do play better on the road, and then at home you almost get too amped up. So I'm cool if they go on the road. I know it essentially ends up being like 1 game. I don't know that it matters a whole lot.
Yeah, plus if you steal one on their court and then you come home, now you have a chance to deliver a knockout blow in game 5. So I think I would assume 99% of the people listening to the pod would prefer home
definitely
court
disagree with me. Yeah.
But I understand it from the standpoint of you may be able to steal one in Madison Square Garden. You might be able to steal one in Indiana. Maybe even Milwaukee, I guess, whoever's there. It wouldn't be Madison Square Garden, though, if they're the 4th seed. So scratch that. But if you could scratch one in Milwaukee or in Indiana and then come back, then maybe you actually can get some momentum and pull something off. So I understand it from that aspect.
In fairness, like, it's not like the records are that different. They're 18-16 at home, 20-15 on the road. It's not like we're talking a crazy amount.
At the end of this week, that's going to be a bigger disparity, though, more than likely, if they take care of business.
All right. So just so everybody's up to date here, I think we can probably scratch off the Knicks, right? Like, we're probably not talking about getting to the 3 seed. They're 6 games back. The Bucks and Pacers very much in play. They're 1 behind both. They're tied in the win column. They're 2 back in the loss column. The other thing to look at is, which we are getting really close to not having to look behind the Pistons. They're 5.5 up on the Hawks here as we record on Tuesday. And even more so, they are 14 up on the 11th place Raptors. So let's knock that out real quick. Wes, can you confirm my math here? Because for some reason, I feel like I'm wrong. I can't see other people confirm it. But as Chuck says, I saw this morning play-in was clinched already. My understanding of 14 games up with 13 to play would mean the worst the Pistons could fall to is the 10. And that's in, like, the most catastrophic scenario possible, like lose out, all of that. So my understanding as we record this, done deal. Wes says, this team is going to play after the regular season, and we're on March 18th. That's incredible.
Yeah, truly best case scenario. Truly best case scenario. Like, we've talked about it so much, I don't even know what to add. Yeah, it's crazy. I've never covered a playoff game, so this is going to be crazy.
Where do you think, where are we at right now? A month ago, I think we asked this question. I probably was answering the 7 or 8 seed. The 6 seed would be difficult to lose and give up. It's not impossible, but it would be difficult. Getting up to the 4 or 5 is actually probably more likely, right? Just based on the numbers. Where do you think this team ultimately ends up?
I can see them ending up in 5. And I think the main reason for that is just, I look at Milwaukee, they've got Dame, they've got Giannis. Historically, the Pistons, I mean, most teams obviously have been unable to solve Giannis. The Bucks have also defeated the Pistons. I forget which one, but one of their last 2 playoff exits were to the Bucks. So the Bucks just have bad vibes. I don't know. When I think about the Pistons Bucks first round, the energy's bad. Whereas Indiana, you have 2 teams that have a history of not liking each other, not just this season, but, in decades past as well. And you have 2 young stars, well, really more than 2 young stars, but, you're looking at 2 guys at Cade and, Halliburton, who are 2 of the best young ball handlers in the league. Halliburton kind of broke out last year. And, of course, this was Cade's breakout season. And that's a series that could conceivably go 7 games. I know the Pacers beat them 3-1 this year, but the first win was on opening night, So I just feel like that's not really indicative of where both of those teams are now. And then obviously if you're in the 6th seed and then you get New York, then, you got a couple wins there already. But to me, Indiana's the matchup that kind of has that sweet spot of intrigue just from a rivalry standpoint, but also I think the games can be a lot of fun.
YouTube user says 25 minutes behind, recording during my drive, just simply unacceptable. I don't know how we can't be more important than work or where. No, drive safe. Appreciate you always supporting. Wes gives us the magic number. So we're going to start at the 10 seed, which is the Heat. So that is 5. The magic number there is 5. Magic number means Pistons win or Heat losses. So you would think over the next few weeks, you would get at least 5, a combination of Pistons wins, Heat losses. You could get 2 of those on Wednesday night, right? As they play each other. The Bulls magic number, which is 9th, is also 5. So essentially 5 gets you into that spot. The Hawks and the Magic, which are right below the Pistons in the play-in, is 7. So you're really looking at that magic number of being 7 for the Pistons to guarantee the play-in, right? Because you could theoretically fall into the play-in, lose twice, not even make a series. And I think that's what all Pistons fans are looking for right now, is a true series for this team. So 7 right now. We were looking at their schedule earlier, Omari. Very favorable or opportunistic coming up with Miami, Dallas still injured. I would assume AD's not back for that one. Pelicans without Trey Murphy. Spurs without Victor and Fox. And then you get 2 days off. Then you get Cleveland, who knows what they're playing for, Minnesota, OKC. And then I think this final stretch after a game at Toronto gets really interesting. You get the Grizzlies, the Kings, the Knicks, and then back-to-back against the Bucks. And we've kind of talked about that Bucks being one of those where, hey, they could be playing for seeding and real playoff seeding, playoff level environments at the end of the regular season there.
Those last 2 games against the Bucks, depending on where the Bucks are, it's so tight now that I can't imagine they'll be resting Lillard and Giannis, right? Maybe there's a chance that they've already got, the 4 wrapped up at that point and, they take 1 or 2 of those games off and then, the Pistons are essentially battling for the 5. But I think regardless, those games are going to have monumental stakes for the outcome. You got the Knicks in there. You have the Grizzlies. We were talking about Marcus Smart earlier. He kind of, helped them beat the Pistons back in November. But, the Grizzlies, they've been right there with the top of the West. What will they be playing for at that point if there's a little bit of a gap? So there's a chance that the schedule breaks in a way to where maybe some of those games aren't as difficult as they look up front. Knicks, they probably can't take that game off. I don't know if there's enough of a cushion between them and the teams underneath for them to do that with 5 games stuff. Toronto, that's probably the only we have to take care of this game left in those last 2 weeks. So it should be fun. A lot of playoff games, essentially playoff games at home too. I think every game those last 2 weeks, except for the very last game in Milwaukee, are all home games. So you said you watched the OKC game on mute, and I kind of laughed because after Cade was ejected, the crowd was so angry and they were chanting, "Refs, you suck." It was the loudest I'd ever heard the arena by a wide margin. And then when I saw the video after the fact, it came through so loud on the TV that it almost sounded louder on TV than it did in real life. So for those games to be at the LCA, maybe they will kind of even up that road record too, because I know fans are going to show up and the atmosphere is going to be crazy.
No, listen, for the fans, they absolutely deserve it. So It was just kind of something I was thinking about with how good they've been on the road this year, that like it would be kind of cool to them go like into Madison Square. Like it just seems like you want the national stage. Cade goes into Madison Square Garden and gives them 40, or Beasley does what he does, whatever. Like people are going to take notice even more. They will anyway. And again, you're going to go play 2 on the road, 2 at home, no matter what. Essentially, home court advantage is only the game 7. It's just like, could you imagine if they stretch that out to a game 7 and they're going into Madison Square Garden game 7 to knock off the Knicks, who've traded all of these assets, and then the Pistons knock them off like that would be Cade's ultimate coming out party, or whoever plays well. So like that's just
the
the
thing
way
too. Like they could fall into the 6th seed, and that outcome is just now you have one of the biggest spotlight games of the first round. So you talk about a coming out party, like there's no bigger spotlight than Madison Square Garden. So if the outcome for not pulling it off and staying at 6 is playing the Knicks in the first round, who you've already won twice, and at Madison Square Garden, like I could still be to me that's still a good outcome. Like I like their odds against the Knicks more than I do against Milwaukee for sure.
Okay, Omari, I want to ask you something. Post All-Star break, the Pistons are first in defensive rating, and they are 2nd in pace, behind only the Utah Jazz. So we won't even count the Utah Jazz. Let's just say they're first in both. Jazz don't count. Which of those numbers is more surprising to you? That the Pistons are first in defensive rating post All-Star break, or that the Pistons play at the fastest pace in the NBA post All-Star break?
Pace, absolutely, because you lost your fastest player like 6 weeks before the deadline. And, essentially they've kind of made up for that, I think with just not only Asar's ability to lead fast breaks and finish fast breaks, but, just the havoc he creates, as well with the steals and whatnot. Like, to me, those 2 stats are like tied. Just they've created more chaos on defense, and that's fed their offense. They're still in a lot of ways a half-court team when the ball is in Cade's hands. But, like, again, you have Asar, you have Duren, you've got guys who can spot up, and, Bees and THJ. The pieces I've been there, essentially for them to be a team that's really, really effective at turning their defense into offense. So I see those stats as being tied. But even with that, like for them to be 2nd, essentially first in pace in that span, still surprises me a bit, just because the ball's in Cade's hands so much.
Harry says, I think first in points in the paint too. Yeah, like they're on some ridiculous streak. I think it was on the broadcast last night that they're the 3rd longest streak since 06-07 in terms of beating the other team in points in the paint.
And so people are pointing out that Duren has a role in that as well, and he does deserve a shout out too.
I'm saving the Duren conversation for the comments coming next segment because we got some stuff there. I also wanted to look at, so I guess I should answer the question. I think I agree with you. I did not think that this team was going to play at this pace at any point. So I want to go back and look at JB's pace stats. So last season with the Cavaliers, they were 22nd in pace. The season before that with the Cavaliers, they were 30th in pace. The season before that, they were 26th in pace. The season before that, they were 25th in pace. I think we have a trend here, right? Like this wasn't necessarily something that JB was known for, at least coming out of Cleveland. I think Again, one of my other big takeaways from that breakdown I did over their offensive actions and sets, I think JB and staff have got to know their players and play a style that fits them best. And that up-tempo style seems to really fit them. And their aggressiveness defensively plays right into it. Every time JD gets a block, every time Asar gets a steal, whoever does, every time Tobias digs at a ball and gets a turnover, they are transitioned the other way. Duren knows to rim run. Beasley, Hardaway Jr. know to run to the corners. Asar knows that he can attack with the ball in his hands. I think the 2 things actually play really, really well together.
And like, it's funny. We haven't really talked about J.I. a lot since he got hurt, but like watching some of these games, I'm like, man, like imagine like Asar has the ball, he's running alongside J.I. and Duren, and you've got like shooters on the wing. And like J.I. shot 41% from 3 this season. Like as fast as he is, like I just feel like you slot him in to that same group and could take that offense to like a different level, right? So they started winning before he got hurt, and they've continued after. But everything they've done since he got hurt, like in my mind, it's just like you could put J.I. here, you could put him there, and I think it's really suited for his game where he's he's going to have some pressure to create just because you kind of need him to in the starting lineup. But there's going to be a lot of creation for him too. Like, I wonder if Duren, like, he has some lob chemistry with a star. We're going to see Duren leading some fast breaks, and J.I. can go up and get it.
No. Listen, I'm giving JD all the credit. I'm about to give him a ton of Omari. I'm going to give him so much love next segment for how he's doing stuff in the half court offensively. I'm good on the grab. They got enough guys to grab and go. Put the ball in Cade's hands. As my guy A. Iverson, I love the name here. Their pace has been super impressive. Asar should get most of the credit. Put the ball in Asar's hands. I'm cool with that. Let JD run. Whatever. Like, I'm good there. I don't think that. I don't think
the
those
fast break vision.
I don't need it. I got enough guys to handle the ball because
he could get like one fast break.
No, he can't. He can get 3 lobs in the fast break. As Jalen, you're my guy.
He's throwing lobs to Asar.
He's also throwing it to the stands. Like, he probably hit you one time sitting behind. No.
He's learning. He'll get it together.
Yeah. So, all right. I think the pace has been awesome. It's a lot of fun. I think JB's done a great job adjusting to the roster and what these guys do well. I do think that Asar has done a really, really nice job. Yeah, so it's a good point. Yeah, adjusting to his players. Maybe just didn't have the roster in Cleveland. So what is their pace this year? That's a good question. Probably still slower. No, it's not. It's 6. So that actually kind of goes away from that a little bit. Atkinson comes in. It was just a point of comparison. The biggest thing for me was I was not expecting him to do that. So like Todd Curtis says, who cares about the Cavs' pace? It was just like what does JB do? When JB got hired, I looked at a few stats and was like, what did he do? And kind of what can we expect? It wasn't an end all be all. It wasn't written in stone. I was just curious. And I feel like the pace has grown throughout the season as well. I don't feel like they played this way at the very start of the year. As pointed out, Asar probably has a lot to do with that. So any other thoughts on that before we get to question?
No, just a team that's figured out its identity. It's a team that understands that that's a formula for winning, and that it's something that they can replicate every single night. And yeah, I mean, it speaks a lot to their growth on defense this season, and it speaks a lot to just how the roster was naturally put together as well, because they are still a really physical team. And I think when you see a team that's physical and scores in the paint a lot, you don't necessarily think, oh, and they also play fast, but they've kind of done all these things at the same time. And again, that's just because of the personnel. You have a lot of big athletic dudes who can, start or finish plays, and you have Cade. So it lends itself to that. And that's why, they need the league in dunks. They need the league in points to the paint. Like they've really found out that they can do this every single night. So that's good for them, right? Like Duren, I think I looked it up. I forget where he is as far as like dunks per game, but he's like really, really, really up there. So they're like somewhere between Lob City and like, I don't even know what the other comparison would be, but you see some of like the JB, how he coached in Memphis too, where, they were rebounding and trying to break teams down. So a mix of styles here, I would say.
So, oh no, he didn't on Twitter posted this from NBA Today, Udonis Haslem. I'm looking at Detroit and I'm saying this could be a first round exit for New York. So there you go. Some national media giving them some love. One final question before we go to break. If J.I. returned, what would your role for him be? Not what do you think JB is going to do, anything like that. What would you do if you were the coach?
I think I would start him. And this is assuming he's 100%. Like, just imagine the injury didn't happen or whatever. Like we're talking about the J.I. that we got this season. Like I would just start him with Cade, Asar, Tobias, and Duren. And, he could play off of like 3 of those guys. Like the shot came around this season. So I don't think you're really losing a whole lot. And then also you could probably sit Cade a little bit earlier. Then you could bring Schroeder in with THJ or Bees or however you want to play that. That could be, I guess, a little bit small. You do have some smaller guards in there. So I'm curious how you have Schroeder, Ivy, and Bees, and if all 3 of those guys could coexist. But I would start Ivy, and I think he meshes right in with the rest of those guys.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I don't know. I think it'd be hard to incorporate him after this many games and how they've played. Todd Curtis says, no, for sure. JB is a smart coach, been around. My concern is we have gone long stretches without a bucket. Often wasn't trying to be negative. No, you're good, Todd. Like, love it whenever people throw comments in the chat, things to push back, talk about whatever. All love, my friend, all love. So speaking of, we got a lot of cool comments. We'll get to them, questions right after this short break.
right, we're back with segment 3. We have some questions queued up here. And
Let's save the fun ones for the end. So skip over Ricardo's first one. Ask what's wrong with Beasley. What are your thoughts there? I know the jumper. I'll pull up the numbers while you kind of give your thoughts on if you think anything is going on or whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't think anything's going wrong. I think over the course of the season, like, you're naturally going to have ebbs and flows. And he's been so consistent this year. Like, his shot volume is like so high and the efficiency is so high with that his shot being off for a few games, like, doesn't really concern me. Like, I don't want to speculate on anything else. Like, there's probably some other stuff people could bring up. But, like, for me, like, I just don't think, a handful of games as a sample size is enough for me to really worry. All shooters are going to have ebbs and flows, and he's been hot for most of the season. So, like I said, I don't think a week or so is enough to sway any opinions as far as what he can do or is currently capable of doing.
The only thing I will also say is, like, I'm with you. Like, I feel like he's been in a little bit of a slump. You know what his numbers guess what his 3-point percentage is for the last 6 games?
I would guess 36, 37%.
Yeah, he's still at 37% on 7 attempts. And his 2-point, guess what his 2-point percentage is over the last 6 games?
Pretty high. I would think 60%.
50%. Now, we know he doesn't take a lot. He's taking 22 in 6 games. So, like, it's not like it's a lot. Like, the weird thing is he keeps missing free throws. Like, I don't know how a dude that shoots the ball so well and with so much confidence is shooting 65% from the free throw line right now. He just doesn't get a lot of volume there as well. So I think it's going to be a shimmy volume low. That's all. Yeah, love the shimmy. I'm not overly worried about it, but I understand, like, people get a little bit nervous. It's been an incredible season, and you always get a little bit nervous, like, is he going to go on a slump at the wrong time? Something like that. I'm going to save that one as well. Okay, Michael says, I don't know if this is a question or comment. You put Stewart seemed close to having to sit out games for Tex. Could that apply to playoff games? It does apply to playoff games. I don't know how close he is. Wes, maybe you could look that up for us if you have a chance. Wasn't this the Draymond thing in one of those series? Didn't he hit the technical limit in that series?
Yeah, at the tech limit.
The finals against the 3-1 comeback, wasn't it? Am I mistaken there?
Well, no, like he was. So it resets in the playoffs. So right now, Stu's at the limit. If he gets like a flagrant one or something like that, or another, like it's something like that, like you start to get suspensions. But that doesn't carry on into the playoffs. So he'll have a clean slate. And
the playoffs are new.
But the playoffs are due. To my knowledge, yeah. Like, I think if I go back, I remember Draymond was just doing like wild stuff all throughout the playoffs. And that was one of the first series where that probably really became a topic.
Got you. Okay, maybe Wes can give us some clarification on that as we go throughout this. Okay, let's go this. Alan from Twitter. I think it's important to point out that Duren had 6 assists in the first half and Asar was getting more touches. It's not a coincidence that our offense looked great again. Again, guys, I said it at the top. I'll put it in the chat in just a second. I'd love to promote my stuff. I think it's good stuff. I really think this one is really interesting as I broke down the actions and the scheme and the sets that Detroit ran, not just last night. It's kind of stuff they've ran all year. I had undervalued O2 how much Jalen Duren kind of operates and orchestrates offense. He gets the ball at the top of a key with zoom actions coming, back doors, all of that. He'll get the ball on the elbow with actions coming. They put a lot of action in his hands for him to attack out of, and he's doing a really good job. So JD absolutely deserves a shout out for how he's running offense in the half court.
Yeah, I believe he's second on the team in total assists. And I agree that I think his overall role in the offense and just how much the ball is in his hands has maybe flown under the radar a bit, just because I think it's a lot of quick actions. Like, you're not necessarily seeing him have to like post up and like, turn and find shooters and this and that. But I think it's a good way for him to continue to develop that aspect of his game, right? Like I said, he can locate Asar in the dunker spot for a alley-oop. He can locate Tobias or Malik Beasley in the corner. And he wants to do it. Like, he loves getting assists. Like, he really wants that to be an established part of his game. And that's one thing, I think I asked JB about this the other week, but JB just said a lot of it is just that he wants to do it, right? And that makes it a lot easier because obviously when you have a big that wants to do it, but also is capable of doing it consistently, and he's become more consistent, that has a lot more variety to your offense. So he's been an underrated piece. I'm really excited to see as he continues to develop his vision and they get a better feel for him, just how much more involved he can become as a passer as this goes.
Our guy, Lil Diaz Lil, aloha from Holland, Michigan. Ron Holland II, Mr. Windmill, let's go Pistons. Always appreciate you joining in. Todd Curtis, what's going on with Asar? He hasn't looked right mentally, kind of concerning. What's your thoughts? I think the biggest thing for me was like we saw some of the minutes stuff, right? Like it seemed like the minutes were ticking up. I can look at them in just a second. And then it seemed like they kind of went back the other way. So I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. Yeah, he had back-to-back games. They weren't back-to-back nights where he played over 30. Since then, 17, 20, 20, 18, 20, 18. So it seems like those minutes have gone back down. Any insight at all, or just kind of your thoughts as an outsider on what that might mean?
Yeah, I think some of it is just that they're pretty deep at forward. And I think just in the flow of the game, like JB has just leaned on other guys at times. Like, Ron's continued to get run. Fontecchio's continued to get run. And one thing he said all season regarding Asar is that a lot of it is just them figuring out like where he is, like wind-wise, right? Like sometimes he may need to sub out and, catch a breath. And he did play 30 back-to-back and, then it's going back down. JB said there's no restriction or anything. So it could just be a combination of, still him getting back into the flow and the competition at that position aspect. But I think along with that, foul trouble. He has a few people I brought up. He's also been in foul trouble in a few games too.
Yeah, so Ricardo says foul trouble. Chuck Brewer says foul trouble. Wes in the private chat said foul trouble. And he has struggled to finish around the rim a little bit.
Yeah, like against Golden State, he played 17 minutes. He had 5 fouls. The next game, the previous game against the Clippers, he had 5 fouls. He had 4 in that first game against the Wizards. So, yeah, I mean, he's had a handful of games where he's been up there. He only had 1 last night, and then the 2 games before that, he had 3. So I guess a lot of that would depend on if he picked up 2 early and then, only picked up 1 from there. I'd have to go back and look, but some of that's foul trouble, but some of that's also just a natural decline in his minutes.
All right, so next question here from Bullvine76. Dennis was a good pickup for this team. Over the last 2 weeks, he's been much more involved. I'm a bit worried. I feel like we played our best basketball with Asar and JD facilitating. Any thoughts? I agree with definitely the first part of Schroeder being a good pickup. I know, like, what's the 3-point percentage at now? Hasn't always looked great with Schroeder, but he's at 34%. I think it's trending up a little bit, but I think he just ran the team the way you would want him to run the team. I think he does a really nice job of that. Already has chemistry with Stewart in the pick and roll, has chemistry with Malik Beasley off-ball relocation. I think they're in a perfect spot, right? I think this is why it would actually be hard to incorporate J.I. Not that I don't want J.I. to come back, but I think they found the nice little realm of, okay, Cade's our primary guy, but we'll let J.D. facilitate some in the half court. We'll always let Asar facilitate in transition, and then we'll let Schroeder be the facilitator off the bench. I actually think that they have a nice little combination of all of that right now.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the thing about Schroeder is that he's fit in so naturally that sometimes I feel like his contributions kind of fly under the radar until he's knocking down the clutch 3 or whatever it may be. But he's just all around solid. Like, I don't necessarily know if I see a decline in playmaking from him to JD and Asar. I think when JD and Asar have the ball and are getting assists, it tends to be fast breaks more often. Like last night, Asar had that no-look pass where he faked with his eyes to Tobias nasty.
That was nasty.
And then but he's doing that stuff in transition where Schroeder could create a transition and in half-court scenarios more. And that's really where they were struggling. It's just their half-court offense grinding to a halt when Cade was sub out. And I think Schroeder's really helped with that a lot. So yeah, he's fit right in. Now his shots begun to fall. I think he's reached double figures in scoring in his last 6 or 7 games. The assists have been up. He's knocking out threes. He's really, I think, filled his role pretty well.
We'll talk about the Isaiah Stewart all defensive team whenever we get to a different question. Wes, on the tech stuff. Stu has 12 techs on the season. 16 is the limit. When he hits 16, suspended for a game. Additional game for every tech after that. So we're probably good on regular season. Technical foul count clears once the playoffs start. In the playoffs, 7 technical fouls will lead to a suspension. So that means Draymond that was his 7th technical just in the playoffs that year?
He was wild. And I would have to go back, but that was one of the biggest topics was what's going on with Draymond? Why does he keep getting these flagrants and techs? So I know it resets in the playoffs. So Yeah, I think Stu's got 11 or 12, but he's facing suspensions for flagrant fouls right now. I don't think he's at the tech limit yet. But if he gets another flagrant 1 or flagrant 2, you're going to have suspensions, man.
So Pathfinder says, should we rest guys so Fontecchio can start and maybe get in a rhythm? I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they handle the stretch run. I think they're going to be in seeding scenarios where they're going to have to try. Maybe they eventually lock up the 6. Maybe somehow they don't see the value or they don't need to make a run maybe there's enough separation. I mean, I do think it's important to have guys rested and all of that for the playoffs, but they have to have a little bit of a gap between the end of the regular season and the start of the series because you have to play the play-in tournament. So you're going to get some rest before the playoffs start.
Like, this team can't think about rest right now. I think they need to keep going.
Yeah, and I think Fontecchio's rhythm has to come from the role he's in because that role's not going to be any bigger in the playoffs. If anything, he's going to have to make shots in less minutes than what he's getting right now. YouTube user asked, what do you think of Asar self-ISO creation attempts? I'm cool with it a few times a game. They've run some actions. They get matchups on him. I like him trying to post smaller matchups when he gets those. Like, he gets a wide range of matchups because some teams put big guys on him. Some teams put smaller guys on him. He's shown flashes of the handle and all of that. For the rest of the regular season, I'm cool. I don't know how much I want them going to it in the playoffs. Like, in the playoffs, it would be time to go to their bread and butter.
Yeah, I think he's more effective, like, not creating those types of attempts right now, even though he has had flashes where the handles looked really tight. And obviously, he's got a pretty good first step and, enough burst to just blow by a lot of guys as well. One thing we haven't seen as much this season is this little turnaround mid-range jumper that he went to a lot last season.
Yeah, he was good at that.
Like, every now and then, it's like 8 seconds on the clock. He would have to hit that as a bailout, but it fell enough that I thought it could have became a genuine weapon for him. So, yeah, I mean, it's good that he's had those flashes. That's definitely an area of his game that could grow a lot. Yeah, I think I agree with Bryce. Like, I don't know if at this stage, that's something you want to rely on in the playoffs too much. But already he's shown growth in that area compared to last season.
Real quick correction, for every 2 technicals, you get an extra game suspension for the Techs in the regular season. Well, this is just a real quick comment. Beasley not a secret anymore. Defensive pay more attention to where he's at all times. I agree with that, and I think that's why we've seen him try to do a little bit more off the bounce. All right, I think the rest of these are let's do this, and then we had some fun ones. So, Alan, do you think we will still be able to run on teams in the playoffs? I have a feeling the pace will slow down a lot, and our half-court offense might become an issue. Okay, so this is always the comment, right? Like, how the pace slows down in the playoffs. That's absolutely true. Like, I think that's going to definitely happen. Now, the way the Pistons get into their transition is by defensive disruption. If they can continue to do that in the playoffs, they'll still be able to get out in transition. I also get frustrated when people say you can't push the pace off a make. I'll show you all sorts of examples, specifically from the Pacers, where you can still get into transition even off a make. But I think it's just like not walking it up the floor. Even those sets where Cade dribbles it up and immediately gets in. But I think this team has shown like an ability to hunt mismatches. And this is where Cade comes into play. This is where Asar comes into play. This is where JD being able to run half-court offense. But I do think, to your point, Alan, we are going to find out about the half-court offense of Cade Cunningham. How much can he do in isolations? How much does the spacing of Duren and Asar become an issue? And this is why you want to play a playoff series, O2, is because this is how those things are exposed if they need to be exposed.
Yeah, pace absolutely slows down in the playoffs, but as you said, a lot of that is just defense, right? You're probably not going to run into a scenario where Stu, Asar, some of the other guys stop being as disruptive as they've been. So I think some of that's like matchup dependent, but a lot of that too is just like how much havoc can you create in those half-court scenarios on defense? Because that's what has ignited those fast breaks. So it just really depends on the matchup. If you get Giannis and Giannis is putting up 35, you're probably not going to get as many disruptions, right? If you're going against Indiana, who already plays, pretty fast anyway, and you could probably have more success forcing turnovers, then I could see an Indiana Pistons series being fairly fast paced as far as playoffs go. So some of that's matchup dependent, but a lot of it too is just how consistent can they be on defense? Because I think regardless, like any non-transition bucket in the playoffs, you're going to have to fight for. And that's why the pace slows down so much.
And I'll reiterate, guys, if you want to see what they're doing in the half court, I got 15 minutes of it over on the Substack. You guys can check out. Corey says, what are your thoughts on the Pistons potentially getting multiple end-of-season awards? Cade getting most improved player, JB getting coach of the year. Is it possible this could happen? So let's go through it real quick. Omari, do we think that anybody on the Pistons is going to get MVP?
Probably not.
Okay, so I agree. Do we think anybody on the Pistons is going to get All-NBA?
Cade I think is deserving when you compare him to the rest of the guards to the East.
Cade is going to make All-NBA. You can guarantee it. I would guess he makes second team All-NBA. Defensive Player of the Year. Here's the thing. Go ahead.
I was gonna say if you could do like a co-award and like give it to Asar and Stu, then I would say absolutely yes. It's just both of those guys are playing so few
Not
minutes.
eligible. Both of those guys are not eligible, O2. Like, I didn't even realize it. I was going to have Asar on my second team all defense. Last game theory, he's not going to get the games. He needs 18 to get to 65. And as the chat has pointed out, Stu has only played like 25 games with 20 or more minutes. Stu's not going to have it either. So this is a top 10 defense in the NBA, and I don't think they'll have somebody.
Yeah, and that's tough. Like I said, like Stu and Asar, they were both nominated for Defensive Player of the Month in February. And like they've really spearheaded, I think, both units for the Pistons, you know, with Duren, I think, over the last month kind of settling into third. So yeah, I mean, the minutes restriction really is tough because like they deserve acknowledgement, even if it's not like Defensive Player of the Year. I think both of those guys absolutely have been all defense caliber defenders this season.
Coach of the Year, I think JB probably gets second. My guess is Atkinson wins it based off what the Cavs have done. He's very
I think they finished 1 and 2 in some order.
I agree. Sixth man of the year, I think Beasley has a real argument there. Sometimes I lose track of like who's eligible and who's not. But like I know Hunter's put up big numbers. Peyton Pritchard's in that conversation. Ty Jerome, like the Cavs now have two guys in that. But I think Beasley absolutely has an argument. I don't want to do the Cade most improved player conversation. Everybody else can have their own thoughts on that. I have mine. Holland, maybe all rookie stuff. The all rookie teams are kind of all over the map. But I would say I would bank on Cade being all NBA. I think JB is going to finish top 2 in Coach of the Year. And I think Beasley's at least going to be top 3 in Sixth Man of the Year. And then unfortunately, like Stu and Asar are going to get mentioned whenever people talk all NBA defense and then mention that they're not eligible. So, all right, last two. These ones are fun. Ricardo, maybe fun. Question, would y'all rather have Killian Hayes jersey or Austin Day Pistons Summer League GOAT jersey?
Man, it's just two very random picks. You know, you could have thrown, some other guys you could have thrown in there. Austin Day, if you're talking like, I don't even know what you would call this group, but there are guys who came in, didn't necessarily live up to, whatever height, the fan base had, but were still memorable. And Austin Day basically just, he came in and people were like, yeah, you're 6'11", Tayshaun. And he wasn't 6'11", Tayshaun. But the way he would hoop in Summer League was just like, he would go off every year. And every year we were like, oh, this is the year where he goes off. So I would have to go Austin Day personally. We thought this dude was going to be truth back in 2011 or 12 or like whatever year it was he got drafted. Like I couldn't even tell you at this point, but 6'11" shooter, like we were excited about him.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer here. I didn't really watch Austin Day. Wes says, if you can tell me I get the Austin Day Summer League jersey, that's my choice. Jalen Bell, Austin Day, hands down. 01 says Chuck Nevitt jersey. Can you explain this one to me, O2?
Chuck Nevitt played for the Pistons in the 80s. Beyond that, I don't know if there's, like, I don't know the Chuck Nevitt lore, unfortunately. This is a little bit before me, so.
Maybe 01 is just throwing out, like
another random player.
Yeah, another random player.
Yeah, I was going to say, like that's such a random, like, Killian Hayes, Austin Day.
So, I will go Killian Hayes because he got drafted the year I started doing this, and, like, him and Sekou were going to be the truth, the guys that led them out of all of this. And so I'll go Killian Hayes. Amazing stuff. And speaking of former players, Sam McKinney, if you could add one former Piston to this roster for the postseason push, who would you pick?
Any Piston? That's a good question. Because a lot of the best players in franchise history are guys with the ball. Like, so the greatest Piston of all time is Isaiah Thomas. Like, I'll probably just add Isaiah Thomas to figure it out. But if it's like role player, then that's like a tougher question. But if it's any Piston, I'm just going to go Isaiah Thomas. I mean,
Okay, so
he got 2 rings. So, yeah, I'm just going to add, easy.
I respect it. I've seen a little bit of Sheed here. Ooh, this is a good one from Grant Hill. Prime Grant Hill is a really good answer.
That's the other one I thought, too. Prime Grant Hill. I did think about him.
Okay, Wes brings up the Blake Griffin. That's interesting. Jalen says Sheed. Always. I think I'm going to lean Grant Hill here. I think Grant Hill would be awesome on the wing playing with this team. I think that would be a lot of fun. I'll go Grant. Okay, Bob Lanier, 3-and-D before 3-and-D, so add some of that. This is fun.
What about Bill Laimbeer? I feel like he would be fun in today's. Like he could shoot the three a little bit. Put him and Stu next to each other.
Current Drummond,
Current Drummond.
Wes says Ben Wallace, and Wes yells all the time about floor spacing. I know what he's going to put in the chat, but Ben Wallace is really good at defense. No, it would be, here's what's hard is like, this sucks. You mean Grant Hill's going to come in and then now these other guys are just out of the rotation after they played all season? I feel for him. I don't want to just eliminate them from the rotation. I think Grant Hill would be my answer. That would be fun. I completely understand yours with Isaiah Thomas, though. That makes plenty of sense in regards to that. So somebody asked about like rookies on winning teams playing well. So Jalen Wells, which like he's definitely first team all rookie, connects, on the Lakers, has played 64 games, averaged 9.5 points. Zach Edey, Tristan Da Silva, the Magic don't have a winning record. Risa Shea is, they're 500. So like to your point, there aren't a whole lot of rookies in regards to that. So like maybe that could be your argument for Ron Hunt. Oh my gosh. Aruna says Darko is second ring. In the last 5 minutes, we have Chuck Nevitt, 7'5", the original Pistons human victory cigar. Somebody equated him to Luka Garza. We have Darko, we have Killian Hayes, we have Andre Drummond. I mean, yeah, we went all over the place. I love it. So in this prime
Alex
outing,
Acker.
Blake,
let's just do random Pistons jerseys. Like Alex Acker. Like, let's go
if
back
I'm getting a Pistons jersey, I'm getting an AI jersey. I don't care how he played in Detroit. AI was my guy growing up. Somebody asked me that whenever I was stuck in the dust storm of the century on Friday, just chilling in a restaurant, hoping I was going to live. So AI is my guy. So I would get a Allen Iverson Pistons jersey.
Yeah, that AI season was cursed. I would love to go. I would love to go back and watch that season. Like for Pistons fans, that's like the Pistons version of the Luka Anthony Davis trade. Like you're watching AI in a Pistons jersey, and it's like, yeah, but this should be Chauncey. Like it's not the same.
Jalen Bell says Dark Horse Prime Jerry Stackhouse would rock on this team.
Oh yeah, he would.
I know he had crazy scoring year, right? Terry Mills is my jersey. I love it. It's amazing. All right, good stuff today, guys. This is what's great about the vibes being good. We can always have great conversation, great chat, even though Wes kicked one of you out for no reason. We'll make sure and, reprimand him for that. We'll dock his pay or something. But no, for real, thank you guys. Make sure you support the Pin Down with Blake and Wes. Make sure you read the Free Press with Omari. And I'm telling you guys, really good video breakdown over there for a lot of the stuff we talked about today on the Motor City Hoops Substack. Completely free to subscribe, read all of those. Otherwise, we'll be back next week. Hopefully a few more Pistons wins. Hopefully some more playoff picture a little clearer. Yeah, as Jalen says, 1,000 in the chat today. Like, subscribe, rate, review, everything you can do to support. We appreciate it. Otherwise, Omari, take it away, my guy.
Absolutely. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Dakota Avery Nichols, our sports editor, Bill Bradley, and big shout out to Wes, as always, and we'll talk to you all next week.